This is Cooper from AiXiom Education, and in this tutorial, we're going to talk about how to write a decent personal statement so that you can get into a top UK university of your dream. Personal statement, the importance of it really depends upon your situation. Many people neglect the personal statement in a very wrong way, and they might also have neglected in a very strategic fashion as well. So let's say you're an American applicant and you're primarily applying to American institutions. And for the UK, you're just placing either Oxford or Cambridge, then you don't have to worry a lot about polishing your personal statement. You don't have to get it polished because if you look at the evaluation metrics, if you look at the assessment metrics of candidates and applicants officially published by Oxford or Cambridge, um, you know, if you look at the list of priorities, the standardized test scores and your A level grades, your IGCSE grades, are always at the top, along with your reference letter. Even the reference letter was placed at the top, but the personal statement is always down below. And the reason behind this is because Oxford and Cambridge operate an interview process. In the interview process, they're going to look at your academic potential, your academic passions, and whether or not you're a good student to work with. And that replaces the function of personal statement because the personal statement tells you, what you really are, right? So, however, with schools like London School of Economics or University College London, Durham, Warwick, and King's College London, with these institutions, the personal statement is critically important. And the reason behind this is because they don't have a dedicated interview process and they need to look at who you are as a person in a personal statement. And the personal statement, when you're applying to London University, is actually the difference maker. There was a student back in my high school. She got 6 A stars in A levels. There were not even predicted grades. There were actual grades in A levels, and she got rejected by the UCL Political Science Department. She was applying to PPE, the same course that I am doing now. And I think one of the main reasons was basically the personal statement. If you're not engaging with academic content, if you're not saying things that the admissions officers were looking for, you're gonna end up having a lot of problem. So, I didn't have star spangled awesome A level grades. I only had what 2 or 3 A stars. I actually only had 2 A stars and 2 A's, and I got in, and I think it was mainly because of the personal statement that I got. So I think it is critically important for you to understand how necessary personal statement really is if you want to break into a top UK university. Because not everyone is going to Oxford or Cambridge. At least you need to have some reassurance. LLC, if you're applying to economics or political science, LLC is an excellent choice. If you really talk about academic importance and academic relevance nowadays, LLC is the number one school in economics. So I think you should really pay attention and start polishing your personal statement if you really want to have decent options after the results of your application. So let's get into it. So first of all, I would like to admit that the personal statement that I wrote, that happened in November 2024. That was about 1 year and a half ago. So the rules of personal statement were quite different. They were quite different from what we are familiar with right now. Because if you look at the current policy, it breaks your personal statement down into 3 questions. The question number 1: why do you want to study this course or subject? Question number 2: how have your qualification studies helped you to prepare for this course or subject? And question 3: what else have you done that make you suitable as a student? So the reason for this revolution, the reason for this reform, the reason for this reform, not a revolution. I think that was an instance of terminological inexactitude. But anyway, the reason behind this reform is that I think the admissions officers and UCAS and universities in general realize something really problematic, if not fatally flawed. It's just that students are not paying attention on writing stuff, that the admissions officer were looking for. So if you're writing random stuff, demonstrating your ego and how fantastic you are, instead of showcasing your true academic passions and your experiences, you're not getting into any good university. And I think what this is all about, the free questions format, it was like, hey, buddy, you need to focus. You need to stop diverting your attention to something that is not important and start to be laser focused on things that we want to talk about, that we want to hear about. Right now, it's like we are specifically asking specific information about you because before 2026, there were so many instances where candidates were not talking about what they've been through. And they want to reroute and say, like, hey, we need to be laser focused on the things that we need to talk about before we make an admissions decision. So that's just what is going on. But at the same time, I believe a good personal statement, a decent personal statement, regardless of this change of rules, right, is actually about the same. So let me demonstrate that with my personal statement, like what a decent personal statement should be. To be really honest with all of y'all, like if it weren't for this personal statement, I don't think I would have been rejected by PPE because if you look at the students that we have, my classmates in my cohort, they have much better A level grades than I do, and I'm actually on the lower end. I'm one of the outliers, and I think the reason why I got in is because of a decent personal statement. I'm telling you that I'm a living example of being a beneficiary of a good personal statement because I know how to write. I know how to write stuff, and this is what I wrote for my personal statement. And you look at the introduction of my personal statement, it's very academic, right? It's like I'm writing a cover letter for a PhD job, and that's what you need to do. Sometimes you can write about your career aspirations in your personal statement. Oh, I want to be a banker at a Goldman Sachs. Yeah, don't write about it. I think that's not what the admissions officers were looking for, especially Oxford, Cambridge. They're not quite career focused, so it is better for you to say, like, hey, I'm writing a personal statement trying to demonstrate my academic passions, and someday I might do a PhD. That's what the admissions officers and the professors were looking for, right? So if you look at my first paragraph, talking about the email exchange with Professor Walter Block, a multiple economist in the Austrian school fashion, right? And then I talked to Peter Becky, Professor Peter Becky at George Mason University, with regard to public choice and all of that, and how my experiences with extended project qualification and model United Nations and debate, how all of them connected together with my reflection about policy issues and political science, and later on, when we talk about Kant epistemology and stuff, right? This entire stuff is an account of basically my academic story. But it is more complicated than that. You cannot just list all the stuff that you do. You need to talk about your introspection. You need to talk about your reflection and your growth and your development after going through all of this, and how it actually helps your understanding of your own subject and the subject that you are applying to. So if you look at this section, we're talking about Austrian economics and public choice, right? We talk about the epistemic limits of policymakers, and also the benevolent limits, right? The limits to what extent that the policymakers are truly benevolent. So these are two different metrics that we evaluate the policymakers, and also connecting to my experience at the MUN and the difficulty that I had to deal with regard to solving the international drug problem. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of the theories behind all of this, but I'm just trying to show you that it's a very in-depth discussion of theoretical ideas and my personal experiences with deep faith and soul. And that's what the admissions officers are looking for. And then we talk about economics, and then we talk about philosophy. And, it's an academic discussion with faith, with soul inside it. And that's what the admissions officers are looking for. They're looking for a student that craves for knowledge. And that's what it's all about in your personal statement. And coming back to this new version of personal statement, obviously question three, what else have you done to prepare outside of education? Now, this can be misleading to a lot of y'all. We're not just talking about, okay, skiing and playing basketball, just mentioning how good you are. No, we all have to link back to how you are as a student. For example, work experience, you can talk about your boutique internship at a investment banking advisory firm or a think tank, right? And how it links back to who you are as a student. For example, like teamwork, for example, individual responsibility and accountability, these type of stuff, right? And how that prepares you for college, the pursuit of individual responsibility, being able to take on peer pressure and pressure from above, right? And these type of stuff, that is what they're looking for. And how have your qualifications and studies helped you prepare for the course or subject? Now, diverting to a secondary topic about this tutorial, which is the 5 uni options you put on a UCAS system. Now, um, to be honest, just put the same course name for all the 5 uni options that you chose. Like if you're applying to PPE, just put 5 PPE options. Okay, if you think you're not competitive enough to be a PPE student, then choose something lighter like social science, but put 5 social science options, because right now it is asking you, oh, why do you want to study this course? But because PPE is a bit different from social science or archaeology, right? You have to be consistent with your UCAS choices to write a decent personal statement that applies to all the choices that you have, because the admissions officer will be like, hey, you're applying to social science. Why are you writing about, PPE, right? And in that case, a bad scenario would be, oh, you got rejected by PPE by King's College London, but at the same time, you got rejected by UCL Social Science. That would be the worst scenario possible. So just be consistent with your UCAS options. And yeah, if you have decent A level grades, free A stars are enough. All you need is a decent personal statement to get into a top UK university that's in the top 10 or top 20 worldwide ranking, right? That's all you have to do. And personal statement is very important. And I think in the next video we're going to talk about how reference letters play in the application process. But this time we're going to only talk about personal statement. And I didn't go to the nitty gritty part of my personal statement stuff. But if you look at this personal statement, you can pause the video and read about it. I understand that it was before the 2026 reform, but this is what you need to get into a university with a ranking like University College London or LSE. You have to have this, right? I mean, if you look at a UCL PPE admissions data, it is identical to LSE Econ. So if you're an LSE Econ applicant, yeah, you can take this personal statement for reference. I think LSE Econ for Chinese applicants specifically has an offer rate about 20%, and the acceptance rate about, I don't know, 13-14%, which is almost identical to UCL PPE. And you need to understand that I got into a very competitive program with very average, like below average A level grades and a horrible standardized test score. But at the same time, I got in because of a decent personal statement that I wrote. So I think it is very important for the viewers to take a look at this and take this as a reference when you are writing your own personal statement. I do really recommend against cheating, right? It is about your story. It's like you are a musician, you are a rapper, you are a pop singer, and you're telling your story in front of your fans. And this is what it's all about. It's about your academic journey, and you have to be original. The world needs no more copies. We need originals. And trying to make sure the admissions officer feel your soul when it comes to your personal statement. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching this tutorial.